Do me a favor, you, Hunter, and anybody else listening to this, when you are in the process of choosing an agent, make sure that agent knows your game really, really well. One, be prepared to sacrifice a little bit of money for two things. One, minutes per game. Minutes per game. You need to play your first year to show what you want to talk hoops and you want to talk through this. Give me a call, send me a text, send me an email, and let's chop it up.
Our guest, overseas and NBA agent, Duncan Lloyd.
Our host, Hunter Strait. Welcome to this week's episode of The Climb.
All right there. How we doing? Today we have a different type of guest joining us on the podcast. Rather than talking to the athletes, the people that are playing on the floor, now we're talking to and getting to discuss with people who are representing those players on the floor. Described as an agent extraordinaire by many, our guest today represents plenty of players playing on all sorts of levels all across the world, from overseas to the NBA. He's got connections with people all over the world and has placed players in different countries and different leagues all across. Today, our guest is Duncan Lloyd. Duncan, how we doing?
I'm good. Thank you for the kind words, Hunter. A friend, or in this case, a cousin of Courtney Strait, is a friend of mine. So, here, I appreciate you having me on.
100%. Just kind of getting into that. So where did that kind of relationship develop? I know through probably some mutual friends and stuff, but just kind of where did that relationship develop?
With Courtney?
Or Courtney?
Yeah, no, that's through Mike Carlson, a Truman State Bulldog alum and a legend in the GLVC. I've worked with Mike since he came out, whatever that was, 8 or 9 years ago now. And he and Courtney know each other pretty well. And she and I have gone back and forth a little bit. And as I said, I thought that was your sister. So I apologize that I messed it up. But I don't know Courtney that well. But she does seem really cool. It seems like she's on her way professionally as well. So yeah, she's the best. So to the extent that you guys would you guys do Thanksgiving and Easter and stuff growing up? How close are your families?
When you say sister, that's kind of how we describe each other anyway. That's the kind of relationship me and her sister kind of have with each other. Yes, we're cousins, but we're not blood related. But at the same time, we've been so close. My mom coached her all throughout her childhood, so we were always together. So more of a sister anyway.
Cool.
So kind of getting into it. I just kind of was curious. So right now, is this a busy time for you? Or what would you say are kind of the busy points for you with your schedule throughout the year?
Definitely, this is the busiest time of the year. This is when college seasons are ending. And obviously, I'm traveling and I'm recruiting and I'm also, supporting and catering to current clients. But, that's as the season is going, September, October, December. Now, as seasons are ending, if I'm not going to conference tournaments, I'm gearing up for either in-person, presentation meetings or, meetings like this over Zoom where, after I've been recruiting a young man for 6 or 8 months or sometimes even longer, it's time to really kind of put all that together because, at this point, the young men that I'm recruiting, 5, 7, 9 other agents are recruiting as well. So I have to do the best I can to not just put my best foot forward, but just reinforce the best points about why we are a good fit together in terms of business partners after that young man leaves school. So yes, very busy time of year. It will remain busy through probably the Chicago Combine and pre-draft. I would honestly say it's pretty busy right on through Summer League, right on through mid-July. And then as I place, I should say, we place our clients in the NBA, in the G League, overseas. Maybe there's a lull a little bit in September and October where, guys kind of are where they are and their seasons are getting started. But there's really never a slow time. Now is the least slow time. But if there is a slow time, it would be kind of the early fall. But right now I'm just trying to think. I'm going to be at 4 different conference tournaments in the next 10 days or something like that. So that's just kind of what my schedule looks like even before the sit down meetings with the young men and their families.
obviously these players, they want to get signed, they want to have an agent, but like you said, for some of these players you're going after, they have 5 to 7 other agencies that are going after them too. So what are you doing to kind of like separate yourself? Do you find these like relationship building or just these conversations kind of difficult to start, or kind of like where do you see yourself in that aspect?
Well, I think any agent who's like been around doing it a while, like I have, like you just kind of have to have a thick skin in terms of like you introduce yourself and some people say no or later or you're not my cup of tea or whatever else, and like that's okay. That's how it is in this business because, as I said, some of these players have more than 10 or 12 or 14 agencies recruiting them. So thick skin, short memory. All I try to do is develop the relationship early. So by the time, March and April roll around and it is time for kind of a bigger, more formal sit down, quote unquote, meeting, we know each other really well at that point. It's not like an awkward first date or second date. I've been to some games. I've been to some practices. We've talked on the phone a couple of times. It's more kind of like seeing everything through up to that point. Right. So really, I don't have a lot of like magical or mysterious things. It's like, here are some really crystal clear examples of some things we've done for guys who are kind of similarly situated to you. Here is exactly the game plan I would have for you. Here's exactly the strategy I have for you. Here's, who I've done that for in the last 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years. Here are their phone numbers if you want to talk to them. And, if some young men and their families ask for it, it's already like, and here are 6 or 8 NBA teams that I've already talked to about you. And here's their feedback. I'm already doing this work. This process has already started, whether you select me or not. I hope you do. But just know that I've already started the work. The ball is already rolling down the mountain for me. So come join me on this journey and let's do this together.
100%. So just kind of developing that level of trust, that level of comfortability where they can feel that you have their best interest at heart and that they can trust you with their future. That makes sense.
That's what it's all about. I mean, as I represent players, they represent me too. So I am very careful in terms of who I recruit and sign. I want them to be very talented, very productive players on the court, but they've got to be really good people, and they've got to be, really dynamic student athletes who will make for, really responsible, dynamic employees. Because whether you're in the NBA or playing in Timbuktu, that's what you are, and you've got to kind of fall into that mindset. The transition from student athlete to professional athlete can sometimes be a little rocky, a little bumpy, and it's my job to make that as smooth as possible for young men and their families. And I spend a lot of time on that, especially for first-year players.
100%. Well, all right. I kind of wanted to get into just your background, your journey, and how you got to be where you are. So just kind of like who you are, kind of what you do, just like what is kind of part of an agent's job, and how did you become an agent just in general?
I've always been around the game. I've always loved the game. There was a time that I could play a little bit. I was not a D1 player. I was good. I wasn't that good. But players that are friends of mine that I grew up with and played, they were D1 players. Some of them ended up playing professionally. So I went to college here in Philly, law school here in Philly. And throughout that time when I was young, when I was 20 and 22 and 24, when I was your age, Hunter, I stayed up with Fran Dunphy. I actually just saw Fran this morning. But he was a guy that I was looked up to and respected. And then when he took the job at Temple from John Chaney, that's when I was at law school across the street. And like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I would just be at school, and I would just go over to practice and just watch Fran and see his guys and just be around the game. Because I don't know why. I just needed to be around it. And guys, would start to come up to me because I would be dressed in my little dorky attire. And they'd be like, well, who are you? Like, are you a coach? Are you like an NBA out? Like,
again, was an agent something that you really saw yourself doing when you were growing up? Or was that kind of something that just came about?
Sorry, before I got that call, it was me just palling around Franny Dunphy's practices at Temple. And then, guys would say like, oh, you're in law school. Like, you must know about contracts. And I would be like, not really, but like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, so, slowly over time, like, guys would ask me about their deals in Norway and Iceland and this and that. And that just kind of got something going in me. So then I interned for a guy who was in this line of work the summer between my first and second years of law school. So that would have been '06 or '07 or something. And that kind of got me going into this world. And I just learned about myself that I really enjoy sitting down with young men who are very talented in a game that I love, but guys that sometimes don't have a really structured, clear path after their run on whatever college campus they've been on. They don't really, have a plan. And for me to, really set forth some goals, some priorities for young men and their family, and then over the course of 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 years, check those boxes off one by one, I found in myself, professionally, that's great and very fulfilling, but it's personally very fulfilling. So for me, it's something that is very easy to give my entire energy and heart and body into because, both personally and professionally, I get a lot out of it. It's funny, like I have one sister and she does this exact same line of work, but for book authors. Right. And, neither one of us like went to graduate school for this. We didn't like grow up in a family, both of my parents are academics. Like no one taught us how to do this or pushed us in this direction, but there's like something mechanically wired in Kate and I that led us into this kind of line of work where, you're an advocate. At the end of the day, you are an advocate for very talented people. And as they are, you get a lot out of their success. You personally and professionally, feel really enriched by seeing them reach their highest goals. And Kate and I have that in common.
100%. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, for someone who does feel that about themselves, someone who's trying to help out a lot of people, this is a good job for it. Because like you said, for people like me, for people who are trying to take that next step professionally when it comes to basketball, this is a lot of times been a lifelong dream. So again, you're help fulfilling dreams, you're helping getting people to places where they want to be. Kind of first client. So like you said, you kind of started entering, who was this first client? Is this someone you're still kind of in contact with? Like, how was this like? Where did this kind of like relationships develop from?
I really, really wish I had like a better, more efficient story to tell you and your audience. No one taught me how to do this. I never went to school for it. Like I created being an agent out of just thin air because I emailed and texted and called, I don't know, 50 players. They all said no over the course of a year. And then one said yes. And then another said yes. And then my first year, I ended up signing 3 guys under the like premise of, well, we've been in touch since October and, I know your game inside and out, and think about how hard I've worked for you up to this point. Think about how much harder I will work for you if you actually sign with me, because I want this just as much as you do, even if not more, right? Counterbalanced with the following. Okay, well, who are your clients? And I would say, great question. Nobody. I have never done this before. And they, he said no. And then 51, 52, and 53 said yes. And one thing I will say that I've been fortunate with is that the guy between me and the guys that I have working for me, we've done a good job identifying not like under the radar players. That's like kind of the wrong term. It's like guys that will be immediately productive as pros, where that kind of rookie learning curve, whether you're in Holland or the G League or Antarctica, you see a lot of guys kind of start off really slowly. We have done a good job of identifying guys who can be pretty good right out of the gate. And then, they kind of just take off once they gain more confidence and experience from there. So once I got going and I was able to sign the first couple of players, I was able to build off of their successes to the next, round and crop of guys that I was recruiting, and then do that again and do that again. And that's it. Like, I really wish I had some magic wand or some like really whimsical story I could tell you that like, oh, like my dentist neighbor was Stephon Marbury and I signed him and like, through him, I got 7 NBA clients. Like, I wish that was my case. I just did this by like staying with it, doing my like Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of just like combing D2 rosters, combing kind of low major D1 rosters, trying to figure out exactly what overseas teams were looking for, starting in Europe and then slowly building into the NBA and G League after like 3 and 4 and 5 years, and then just building out from there.
100%. One thing that I did like that you were talking about, like, yes, for someone who's trying to get an agent, yes, it might be a little bit of a turnoff to hear, okay, I don't have any clients right now. But also, again, for someone who's trying to prove themselves, trying to make a name for themselves, having someone who doesn't have clients and is going to be completely focused on you can be an advantage at some point. So yeah, I can get that.
I knew you in 2010 or whatever the heck it was. Yeah, exactly.
100%. I wish I did too. So this was something I was really interested in because, again, like you said, you're someone who just this kind of came out of thin air. This wasn't something that was kind of in the works for you, just kind of in general. So where did these relationships with these overseas teams and just like executives, all that kind of stuff develop? Because, again, that's just kind of a random kind of.
I did it I feel like almost embarrassed to like tell you this. I did it exactly the same way. I cold emailed people in Germany and France and Argentina for like 2 years. Like 2 years, like thousands of emails, right? And like they didn't know me, I didn't know them, but like they would say, well, talk to this agent or talk to this GM. Like what you're describing, that person, it might strike a chord with them, right? Oh, that guy was an American player and he's cool with all the American guys and he played over here in whatever, Belgium for 10 years and now he lives here. Connect with that guy, even though he's 65 years old, he's really connected over here and like, go to him first. So like slowly, steadily, it's like building a house of cards. It's like, you've just got to go, card by card until you've got a nice little house. Again, like, that is probably the dumbest, like least efficient way to do anything, whether you're building a water bottle business or a sports agency. But like, that's the way I did it. I think I'm better for it because I do know people all over the place now. But there was no secret to that. It literally just took like, how do you become a good jump shooter, right? How do you play in Carnegie Hall, right? You practice. Like I just spent the time developing that network over the course of like a decade.
100%. Yeah. No, yeah, because that was something that was very interesting to me because as someone who, again, is like in the process of, I guess, looking for agents, doing that whole thing, like a lot of it probably will come down to me just sitting down, looking through a bunch of people, hitting up a bunch of different people. It's just that extra work. So I can appreciate that. Just, you know what, I just want to get it done. So that go-getter kind of mindset.
Do me a favor, you, Hunter, and anybody else listening to this, when you are in the process of choosing an agent, make sure that agent knows your game really, really well. It does not need to be Rich Paul, right? This agent does not need to be Bill Duffy, right? But if they don't know your game and they're just trying to sell you a bill of goods, the problem with that is when a team actually does call him or her and says, all right, tell me about Hunter Strait and what his strongest attributes are, where he needs to improve, and what role he would play for us on this team. If that agent blows smoke and is bullshitting his way or her way through that question, you are in trouble. You do not have an agent that has your best interests in mind, because that will reflect poorly on you when you get to this team. So I honestly, having done it myself, I'd be much more comfortable with an agent with no clients that knows my game inside and out and I have a good vibe with and, picks up when I call and emails me back when I email than Bill Duffy, who for whatever reason is lying to teams in Serbia about Hunter Strait, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar center, back to the basket, pivot man, right? Yeah. So like, that would be my strongest recommendation to you and anybody else listening when you're picking an agent. Get an agent that knows your game inside and out so he or she can speak with credibility when teams ask about you.
100%. So kind of let's just get into it. So the big portion of what I really wanted to talk to you about is as someone who's trying to get into these ranks themselves is just like, how do you kind of get into it? So like for someone like myself who's looking to get a professional contract overseas, like where should they get started?
So I think picking an agent is a good place to start. Not that I'm any smarter or better or at whatever than you. It's just I have this network and relationships where teams reach out to me constantly. Like, what players do you have? We have this opening. We have that opening. It's really different now than even when I started. I don't feel that old, but I feel like I like sound like such an old person who's been doing this forever. But the
Yeah.
point of the matter is, like, even in the time that I've been doing this, like Twitter, Instagram, all the direct messaging stuff, I hate to say it, like, agents are less useful than they were 15 years ago when, like, you couldn't get to that player but for that, right? So if I were you, I would look at similarly situated guys coming out of the GLVC, similar type size, similar type team success, similar type numbers, and see where they have played professionally. Would you, Hunter Strait, be a really good fit on Panathinaikos in Greece, a top EuroLeague team? Probably not, right? That's probably not going to be your first foray into European basketball. But Pro A Germany, Holland, right? Maybe the second division of Italian basketball, something like that. Educate yourself as to where your sweet spot probably should be in year one. And then correlate that to your agent search in terms of where he or she has placed their clients in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. You don't want an agent recreating the wheel. It's like Hunter Strait is someone who is in my wheelhouse. I've done well with similarly situated players coming out. Here are the leagues that, you know, he went to in year one, and this is where they were in years 2, 3, and 4, and 5 as I build his career and the player builds his career the right way. So if I'm you and I'm trying to pick an agent, I'm doing my own homework, independent homework about where I should be in the first place from a league standpoint, and then interviewing some people that have done well with similarly situated players like me, but then also asking them the follow-up questions of, how well do you know my individual game, and where have you placed similarly situated players like me in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and then go from there.
No, that's perfect. I was going to say, you just kind of knocked off a couple of my questions right there. I was going to ask, like, kind of like, once you get talking with these agents, what are these conversations going to be like? What are the questions that you should kind of be asking to get a better representation of how they are? I mean, that was spot on. When it comes to like someone just trying to get in touch with an agent like you, what would be the best way of kind of going about that? Like you said, there's so many different avenues as far as to get in contact with people with social media and all that. But like, just, would you say just kind of mass reaching out to a bunch of agents is probably kind of your best bet, or maybe circling that search down, like you said, to more agents that could fit your play style?
I would suggest that you call me, and I'll give you the cell phone numbers of 4 agents that would be perfect for you. And then you make some decisions from there. And that goes for anybody else listening to this podcast. Because at the end of the day, like, it is complicated. Yeah. And if you don't go through somebody that you like and trust and has been doing it for a while, the second suggestion I would make is talk to your buddies who are playing overseas or in the NBA or in the G League, and try to connect with their person or their agency and do it that way. Or else you're going to get like kind of shoulder deep in like FIBA's website, and then you've got like 75 agents' email addresses, and you're like, this is too much. 100%. Go with the relationships that you already have. Go with some people that you trust. And if that agency can't take you on, have them make suggestions towards agents and agencies that can.
So like when you're looking for a job overseas, or like with professionally in general, for a player, should you look for something like, because again, if you're good enough, you're going to get probably a couple different offers from a couple different countries, couple different leagues. Should you be, I want to get money, the highest paid money, maybe a league that's going to be a better league, or just a country that you're going for? Like, what are these kind of conversations like that you're having with the player, or just with your client in general when it comes to deciding which place to go?
That is actually an enormously big and oftentimes complicated question, because different clients need different things, right? A 33-year-old client with 2 children who's been playing for 10 years, who like isn't really interested in like climbing the ladder anymore, right? He just says, cash me out. Yeah. I am good to play in Saudi Arabia or Argentina, and those are perfectly good leagues too. But it's like, I'm not in the like build them up mode. I'm in the cash out mode. Go ahead and find me the highest paying job, and I will play in Laos, or I will play in Mongolia, and it's time to do that. No problem. Okay, I'm with it. Cool, let's do it. Mm-hmm. For someone like you, though, and my guess is for a lot of the folks who are going to be listening to this podcast or videocast, I would say at least in year one, be prepared to sacrifice a little bit of money for 2 things. One, minutes per game. Minutes per game. You need to play your first year to show what you can do. Go to a team that has a coach and an assistant coach that is really into you, has a starter's role carved out, and is going to let you be, Hunter Strait 2.0 for 8 months.
Yeah.
Have absolutely top priority. Second thing that I always try to get done, it doesn't always work, try to get done, is play in a first division. I mentioned like the second division of Germany, the second division of Italy. Those are good leagues, and some of those teams actually pay pretty well. The problem that you run into is that you don't play the best domestic players. You're not playing the best German guys. You're not playing the best Italian guys because they're playing in the first division, right? So when it comes time for the next job that next summer, the feedback that you get is, oh, well, yeah, he got 18-7, but he did it against second tier competition. Is that fair? Is that legit? Maybe not, but that's the perception, right? That's the vibe. That's the BS you get thrown back at you. So I would say try to, even if it's not a like tippy top level league, first division, like Germany's first division, France's first division, things like that. Even if you're playing in Finland in year one or Portugal in year one, Holland in year one, where the budgets are not super high, but you're playing 25 or 30 minutes a night for a good first division team that has playoff aspirations, that sets an incredibly good foundation for years 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 going forward. So what I just said is like not 100% right every single time. Different guys have different considerations and different, what I said is generally true. It is not 1000% true every time, but for first year players, those are priorities I always lay out for our guys: first divisions and minutes per game.
Love that. Kind of getting into, again, these type of players, something that has kind of always not frustrated me, but just is something that I've just kind of had to deal with especially specifically the way I play, is I feel like a lot of times the things that I do or some of my strengths are things that don't show up in the stat sheet, or maybe don't show up like just like eyes popping out off film, like little things, leadership, doing the little dirty things on defense, like kind of leading the team, running the offense. Those types of things don't always show up, or even just making the right play and it doesn't lead to an assist or some type of a thing. How would someone like this, maybe someone whose stats don't pop off the page, kind of market themselves a little bit better when, yes, they are talented, but the things that they do don't necessarily show up in the stats?
The answer is that it's hard.
Yeah.
The answer is that it's hard. You are not 7 feet tall. You are not Vince Carter as an athlete. And I'm not saying this to be a jerk. I mean, these are the challenges you're going to face. That's just so. What I would strongly suggest is getting like references. I mean, get your film together and get your highlight reel together and make sure that your profile is as sexy as possible. No question. There's no substitute for that. Yeah. But also try to get some references from some people that have a little bit of juice, either in the G League or for whatever reason in Germany, Holland, Belgium, Italy, right? Like, do you know any coaches that have coached over there? Do you have any friends that have played over there that their coach can vouch for you after watching a game or two, right? So it's all about relationships, especially when you're not a 25-11 guy who's 6'9" game out, right? So I would say the answer to kind of overcome those challenges would be have some people who have some juice, put 2 or 3 sentences from 3 or 4 different people that have different levels of juice in different places, right smack dab center on your profile that also includes your film and highlight reel and whatever else, and then include those people's contact information. So in case a GM or a coach wants to reach out to, Jeff or whoever else, can get to that person and talk about you and say, and answer that question directly. Well, I see this, from the stat sheet, I see this from his film. Here's what I believe his shortcomings are. And then, Jeff can say, well, you need to keep in mind that here are some 4 or 5 other incredibly positive things that he does to affect a winning culture, affect more wins than, basically your VORP, right? Like, than someone else who would be in his position if given the opportunities. So that would be my strongest suggestion, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. Just to kind of wrap things up here, I know I don't want to keep it too long. So like you said, these next few months are going to be very busy. Lots of conference tournaments, just lots of conversations and stuff. So again, if you just kind of go into where you're going to be, what these next couple months are going to kind of look like for you.
I'll be on planes, trains, and automobiles, zigging and zagging, but like this is what I love to do. And you can't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like just as you are kind of describing, how do I get myself out there? How do I become a pro when I'm not a D2 All-American and I didn't average 27 and 15 and whatever else. You have to put yourself out there. You have to put yourself out there. And I do the same thing, right? Like I'm not Bill Duffy, right? I'm not Jeff Schwartz, whatever. Like I have to put myself in positions to be successful. Then I just have to be myself. I just have to be consistent and be honest, and be passionate about these guys that I have a really clear-cut plan, path, and strategy for, all laid out and ready to rock, if given the opportunity. You've got to have the same mindset in terms of if I get that call from a team in Holland or Belgium or wherever else. So, as I said, I'll be in Chicago. I will be in New York. I will be in Atlantic City. I will be in Asheville. I'm going to be in a lot of places. And that's part of the recipe of doing the best I can to put myself in positions to be successful. I'm not going to bat 1,000, but I'm not going to strike out looking either.
100%. When you're going through these next few months, are there maybe a target amount of guys or again, you're going to have dudes that you want to get, or is there like a set amount of people you're kind of going into like for each season that you're trying to
No, I'd sign all the guys that I'm recruiting. I don't think that's realistic, but I'd like to try to grow by maybe 2 or 4 or maybe even 6 on a bigger year per year basis, something like that. But no, I mean, as I said, I take the guys, the guys I recruit really hard and really comprehensively. And I hope for the best, but I hope to sign 4, 5, 6 guys, every spring.
Perfect. Before we end things, is there just anything that you would like to promote or just kind of talk about here before we wrap things up?
No, I would just say, if anybody who's listening to this video cast, wants to talk about, the process from conference tournaments to seasons ending to Portsmouth, to Chicago, to the draft, to summer league, to then the kind of domestic path in July and August, to the international path in July and August, like call me, text me. Like this is, I get so excited talking about this. Is my life's passion. So the only thing that I would promote is if you want to talk hoops and you want to talk through this, give me a call, send me a text, send me an email, and let's chop it up. And that way I'd like to think of myself, as I said, as someone who's not any smarter than you or anybody else, Hunter, but I've just lived in this crazy world and I've loved it for 15 plus years at this point. So I think that's what I would wrap up with.
Love that. Again, so I just want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank our guest, Duncan Lloyd, for just sharing his wisdom with us today. As someone who's trying to start this journey of playing professional basketball, get overseas. And again, I have people around me who have gone through it, but I've never gone through it myself. So just don't really have these questions, have a lot of things that I want to learn. So thank you for answering these questions, just kind of being there. Obviously, go check him out. I'm going to leave his socials and all that type of stuff down below. And with that, if everyone could please like and subscribe to the channel. You have no idea how much this helps with getting the reach out, just getting just the voice out for the podcast. It helps out a lot. And if you could just leave down in the comments any guests that you would like to see moving forward. And with that being said, let's just make sure to stay strong and keep climbing. See you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Hunter.